Namaste viewers and welcome to another episode of Amazing Vedas with Dr. Parikshita Singh. Thank you, Dr. Singh, for joining us. We are focusing on Vedas for Gen Z, your new book, which is in the press, and we look forward to seeing it very soon. And we also talked about the journey of the hero, which is what the Veda invites us to undertake, and especially when we are young, when we are full of spirit, and when we have the energy to make a difference. So let me just ask you to, sort of return to the Veda from the point of view of the younger people, because, they often want to ask, what is it meant when we say the Veda is Apaurusheya? Does it mean it wasn't composed by human beings? I mean, it's a puzzle to them because obviously the rishis' names are there, right? Whether it is Vishwamitra or whether it is, Madhuchandas or whether it is Atri and Angi, Rasa, all these names, even so many female rishis are mentioned. And then we say it's Apaurusha. So I think a fundamental question that sometimes troubles, or should I say tickles the young, is whom does the Veda belong to? And I think you have a short section on that in your book. So perhaps you can give us, read that little section for us, and then we can discuss it if you like.
Yes. So let me read it because it has two perspectives on it. But let me start this, read this, and let's see. Then we can discuss. Who does the Veda belong to? Here is something else that is unusual. We don't know who wrote the Veda in the modern sense. No author bios, no origin story, and no personal branding. The knowledge is attributed to rishis and rishikas, seers who saw the truth rather than invented it. The Veda is described as Apauruṣeya, not of human origin, not because it fell from the sky, but because it was discovered, not created. This leads to a simple but powerful idea. This knowledge doesn't belong to a person. It belongs to anyone willing to explore it, including you.
Yes. So, I was, in fact, I was remarking when I read the passage on the subtle way in which you are showing the difference between certain other traditions which trace their origin to a single author or a prophet who, as it were, received a particular revelation or message, whereas the Vedas are like an open book, literally. And
Yes.
also the very interesting similarities, because even with the holy books of some of these other traditions, authorship is not claimed. It is always attributed to a higher force.
Yes.
Like for example, in Islam, it's the Archangel Gabriel or Jibril
Right.
who prompts the prophet to receive it. So again, it's Apaurusheya in that sense.
Yes.
The individual is the recipient, like our Veda rishis were. But I also think that there is another angle to all of this, which is that, what is this Purusha? Which Apaurushya is it? Is it the human we are talking about, or is it the divine Purusha? Because the Veda also has the great Purusha Suktam, because when we say in Christianity that man is made in the image of God, what does
Right.
that mean? That is we, the Purush, in a way resemble that Akhanda Shirsha Purusha, Sahasraksha Sahasrapad, etc. So, what I'm trying to ask you is there are parallels and yet there are differences. But certainly, in my view at least, one understanding of Apaurusha directly ties up with the idea that the Vedas are Shruti and not Smriti. So, because they are not remembered texts, in other words, they are not written down at some point in history and then remembered or regurgitated, and whose meanings are fixed, but we are really talking about the living Veda, and the so called revelation is not fixed in history at some point, but it's a continuously flowing presence and revelation, you know. And Derrida, as it were, queered the pitch by talking about logocentrism as the metaphysics of presence and all that. For Veda, the whole the world of both the sublime and the ordinary is always ever present, and it's
Yeah.
a continuous stream. So there is no anxiety about that absence which comes through historical time. So anyhow, I guess, muddied the waters a bit, but I want you
Yeah.
to elaborate on
So,
what Apaurusheya really means
yes.
for the younger person. Yeah.
So, the way I saw it, and I tried to explain it earlier, but let me try again. Apaurusheya. So, one way to look at it is no person. So, remember, this is not coming from ordinary people, people who are focused on improving their brand, improving their following, the likes. These are evolved beings, these are Aryans who have gone beyond the limitations of the ego. They don't see the world as centered around themselves. They see a world that is a vast a field of action, and not just with their constricted awareness, but they live in a wider awareness. So, in that sense, they are beyond personality. But another important aspect, and you and I, being writers, poets, we have often experienced it, is there comes a moment in the creative flow that something else begins to happen. The personality goes away, and something almost spontaneously explodes on its own. Words come as if pre-made, and they come with a flow, and all we do is transcribe them, or we just listen to them. Poetry especially, we become listeners rather than creators. We are no longer writers, we are transcribers. So in that sense, they heard it. The famous definition of a rishi is rishio mantra drishtaraha, one who sees the mantra, not one who writes it. So again, these are very refined human beings, evolved beings, who have ascended to a level of awareness that is called the ultimate sky, right? Param Vyoma. Param Vyoma is the sky, the awareness they have reached is the ultimate reach of consciousness, where personalities go away. You're in a wide space of realization, of consciousness, and then whatever is seen, the rishi gives words to it. He brings a body to it. He gives, and it spontaneously organizes itself. And we know this as aspiring poets, writers. We know that in creativity, there is no personality. Personality goes away. So, in that sense, also, it is Apaurusheya. And I think originally that's what it was meant as, that these mantras were seen in a heightened state of awareness, and that state was called Parama Vyoma, or the ultimate sky.
Yes, exactly. I think that there is another sense in which you meant, the understanding of Apaurusha, which is that it is knowledge that you have to recognize and experience for yourself for it to be real. It's not something that's already out there, settled, and, it's not an object. It's really something that has to be lived, and actually, once again, you have to rediscover it. Every individual has to come to that knowledge for himself or herself all over again. And we see this in the Gita as well. That and in fact, let me just read the concluding part of that section that you began with. And you say here in your book, key takeaway: the Veda is not asking you to believe; it is
Yes,
asking you to look, to
yes,
listen, to question, to experience, because truth is not something you inherit, it is something you recognize. And that recognition begins not with faith, but with attention. For you must remember, where there is attention, there is love. So it seems to me that the takeaway, at least for me, is that the Veda does not believe in second-hand truth. It does not believe, again, using the word belief in that sense, in a set of
Yes.
doctrines or dogmas. But the only truth that is real to you or me or Gen Z or any individual out there is the truth that she or he has herself or himself earned. So, and that earning and yearning, the yearning which leads to the earning of the truth, is what I think the Vedic way is. So, your concluding thoughts now, Dr. Singh,
Yes.
before we wrap up this episode and maybe go to the last one for today
Yes.
on the amazing Vedas.
So let me just, because when you were saying Apaurusheya, really, it was a very, I'd never looked at it that way, but when you brought it up, it's a very profound way of seeing it. When you said Apaurushaya is not just how it was received by the rishis, but how we receive it. So when we receive it, is it our ego trying to take it, or are we in a state of refinement where our ego itself has given space to an awareness that is willing to receive without any preconditions, without any narrowness or constriction, or this is my frame of reference, and we become Apaurushaya ourselves when we receive it. And that's, I think, a very good, brilliant insight. I'm not sure if it was used traditionally, but I think it is very important that we realize it, that even today, if we want to understand the Veda, if we reach that state of Apaurushaya, we will understand the Veda much more clearly, and perhaps the Veda will become alive once more. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Singh, because it is only when we reach the Paramavyoma ourselves that we
Yes.
can also attain to the Paramagati. And that is the journey, as it were, of that,
Yes.
noble seeker or sadhak who, in a sense, aspires to become that, I would say, the Shambhala warrior of our own times. So,
Yes.
with those words, Dr. Singh, thank you once again. Viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and do continue onward on the sunlit path in our journey to understand the amazing Vedas. Thank you, and see you soon. Namaste.